More than 2,700 citizen soldiers of the Minnesota National Guard's 1st Brigade Combat Team, 34th Red Bull Infantry Division left Minnesota in May 2011 and deployed to Kuwait through May 2012 in support of Operation New Dawn. These soldiers, representing more than 500 communities throughout the state, are part of the single largest deployment of troops from Minnesota since World War II. During this historic deployment, they faced many challenges. One major challenge was the mission to secure the routes, bases, and convoys in support of the successful withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq in December 2011. Additionally, the brigade took an important role in training regional military forces and preparing them to stand on their own. Now that those vital military missions are accomplished, they face one more challenge when they return home: unemployment.
Early on in the deployment, the brigade was talking with some of their commanders and found that a lot of our soldiers are going to be potentially unemployed when they return from the deployment. With some research, we learned that number is somewhere in the 25 to 30% range, and that really caused a lot of heads to turn. And we realized that while we can't get soldiers a job per se, we could really affect a lot of the training to provide them with a good chance to find employment and really give them a good head start rather than waiting until after we return from the deployment.
Seeing this potential difficulty for returning service members, the Minnesota National Guard's Deployment Cycle Support Team, with guidance from Minnesota National Guard Adjutant General Major General Rick Nash, took a proactive action and started mapping out a plan for success to face this challenge head on.
And they sort of took an informal poll around all the soldiers, 28%. So that's what stuck in my mind, and I thought, you know, this can't be, that we've got this many coming back without a job, not coming back to school as a full-time student or a student part-time job or a part-time job, who's not coming back to a job. And so we had to figure out another means of tackling this other than the demob site.
Within a month of the brigade's departure, the Minnesota National Guard brought together an interagency employment work group made up of more than 20 state, federal, and local partners. A January 2012 employment survey by the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, or DEED, and the Minnesota National Guard solidified that a high number of the brigade soldiers will be unemployed after demobilization. Nearly 20% were unemployed prior to the deployment, compared with the state's average rate of 5.7%. One of the most important items identified by the working group for hiring today's veterans was getting the different organizations all on the same page. They united behind a successful network that already existed within DEED, linking veterans with DEED's veteran employment representatives. It was obvious that the entry point for both job seekers and employers would be best served by positivelyminnesota.com/veterans. It is where prospective employers and veterans looking for work connect. In order to keep those Red Bulls stationed in Kuwait on track to find an employment, General Nash directed that an Employment Resource Team, or ERT, travel to Kuwait and teach real-life employment skills to those soldiers who would be seeking new jobs.
A civilian team from corporations, national corporations, so we would have maximum touching across the nation of corporations that, regardless it's an active duty soldier, a reserve component, Army, Navy, Marine, Coast Guardsman, not necessarily just Minnesota, so that we would have the ability to have a consistency. If wherever people come back to and settle in on, there'd be a consistency in terms of the best techniques out there now that you all know from businesses that individuals looking for a job should have that skill set.
The enemy is now unemployment. How do we beat this thing? And we quickly found out that we couldn't do this by ourselves. So we called back home, and through the good graces of corporate America, through the governor's office, the adjutant general's office, the state colleges and universities, they brought together this team of professionals.
Led by Army Chaplain Colonel John Morris and Deployment Cycle Support Chief Major Aaron Krenz, a 9-member civilian interagency employment resource team was formed. They established a curriculum and trained for more than a month for their mission in Kuwait. The team represented a wide range of talent: Marvin Hamilton, Target; Christopher Hill, U.S. Bank; Bruce Kiefner, Best Buy; Ron Keelan, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development; Jim Finley, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development; Gina Sobania, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. Tony Tingwell, Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs Higher Education Veterans Program. Grant Hino, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And Dick Daniels, St. Paul Chamber of Commerce. After more than a month of preparation, the ERT was ready to travel to Kuwait. From March 1st through March 7th, this group of professionals traveled to 3 bases in Kuwait and worked 14 hours a day, ensuring that our service members have a head start on gaining employment. More than 1,000 service members attended classes and learned a variety of specific skills from the ERT, such as using the Minnesota State Colleges and University systems, My Military GPS Life Plan, to determine career goals and aptitudes, interview skills, resume writing, and how to use MinnesotaWorks.net via PositivelyMinnesota.com. Military skill conversion to civilian for resumes and interviews.
We hear a lot about the gap between the military language and the civilian language, and I think it's important to help them bridge that gap, to say, this is what I did in the military, but make it into civilian terms so that civilian employers can understand what they did in the military.
Emerging job trends specific to each region in Minnesota. Educational opportunities that lead to employment. Professional networking. Minnesota-specific employment opportunities. Translating military, life skills, or deployment experience to college credit. An introduction to existing web and virtual resources. At the end of the week-long trip, it was meaningful training not only for the soldiers, but also for the ERT members.
I'm just as proud as can be and honored, mostly honored, to be part of the whole program to help these young men and women out.
I mean, the work that we're doing is important. It's been a great experience for me, but honestly, the best experience I've had is really being able to meet these soldiers. And without an organization like Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, this wouldn't be possible. So for the U.S. Bank to be a part of an organization like that and to really be leading the way with investing in our veterans and their families and our employees, it means the world to me, especially being here and being able to see the soldiers and seeing what they're doing on a daily basis for us.
The ERT left Kuwait knowing that their efforts had made a difference in job hunting prospects for deployed Minnesota National Guard soldiers.
Because it makes you look back, it makes you actually realize all of the work that it's going to be and realize that you can start doing those things now. You don't have to wait and do it all at once. You can start taking the steps to make the transition easier.
The ERT concluded that soldiers needed to work on better selling themselves in resumes and job interviews. And that's what they did following the ERT's departure. The Red Bull commanders in Kuwait continued to lead their soldiers in practicing their interview skills learned from the ERT. And this enduring effort continues with skills training, mentorship, job fairs, and other special events after the citizen soldiers return home. Time will tell, but the efforts of the Employment Resource Team and the ongoing Interagency Employment Working Group has set returning soldiers up for success. Thanks to this focus on hiring today's veteran, military job seekers can now better describe to potential employers that they have a fast learning curve and transferable skills. They have experience with advanced technology, proven leadership, demonstrated teamwork, ability to work well under pressure, and know how to triumph over adversity.